Be in the know with unlimited access to IBJ and Inside Indiana Business. Our in-depth coverage of all things business means you'll always be completely in the know. Subscribe for just $1 a week. Get started now at ibj.com/trial offer.
Off the Record with the Indiana 250 is presented by Prolific. When what worked stops working, I point purpose-driven leaders to Prolific, the growth firm. They turn plans into results with full-service marketing and strategy focused on outcomes, not vanity metrics. Head to prolifichq.com to learn more.
It is advice that I give when I go speak to a class or talk to a young person about a career in sports. I say, make yourself as valuable as possible and embrace the crap jobs, that no one else wants to do, and make yourself valuable.
Welcome to Off the Record, a podcast featuring leaders on IBJ Media's Indiana 250 list. I'm Nate Feltman, CEO of IBJ Media, which publishes the Indiana 250, a list of the most influential business people in Indiana. Welcome to Off the Record, a podcast featuring leaders on IBJ Media's Indiana 250 list. I'm Nate Feltman, CEO of IBJ Media, which publishes the Indiana 250, a list of the most influential business people in the state. Today, I'm joined by Pete Ward, longtime Chief Operating Officer of the Indianapolis Colts. Pete is the only remaining member of the Colts staff who experienced the team's move from Baltimore to Indianapolis in 1984. We're going to talk more about that. He joined the franchise in 1981 as an unpaid intern and was hired full-time as an administrative assistant the following year after graduating from the University of Virginia. Landing a job with an NFL franchise was the culmination of a dream for Pete, who decided at age 11 that he wanted to work for a professional football team after visiting an NFL training camp. Born in New Orleans and raised for a long time, I think is what pronounced Carmel, not Carmel, Carmel, California, Pete and his family eventually moved to Virginia. When it was time for Pete to find a summer job while in college, he first inquired with the Redskins. When they turned him down, he drove up the road to the Colts headquarters and found the summer job that would define his career. Pete has vivid memories of the midnight move from Baltimore and the subsequent challenge of setting up shop in Indianapolis, a city back then he only knew as Naptown. Shortly after the franchise arrived in Indy, Pete was named Director of Operations, beginning an ascent with the franchise that eventually led to him being the Colts' point person in the design and construction of Lucas Oil Stadium, the city's Super Bowl bids, and the 2012 Super Bowl host committee. He became the team's chief operating officer in 2010. More than 40 years after the midnight move to Indy, Pete's involvement in our city transcends football. He serves on the boards of the Indiana University Mel and Bren Simon Comprehensive Cancer Center, Visit Indy, USA Football, the Indianapolis Zoo, and the Greater Indianapolis Progress Committee. This year, he was also named to the new Indy Economic Development Board. Pete, welcome to Off the Record podcast. It is amazing to have you in as guest, and certainly at a time when the Colts are off to a great start this year. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Nate. It's always better to be on these podcasts when we're winning. I've discovered through the years.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I always love starting from the beginning of one's career, and yours is special in that it feels like you knew from a pretty early age what you wanted to do in your life and your career. And so I mentioned in the intro that it was somewhere around the age of 11 that you visited an NFL training camp, and after that experience, you were really kind of knew what you wanted to do. Is that an accurate description, or talk a little bit about?
You know what? Pretty much, it was 1968. I really discovered the NFL football in '66, and I became a fan of the Dallas Cowboys. Before it was fashionable to be a Cowboy fan, I thought Don Meredith reminded me of John Wayne, and they had Bob Hayes, the world's fastest human, and Tom Landry wore the hat, and so the Cowboys had their training camp in Thousand Oaks, California, visited in '68, wanted to be a player, of course, but I also noticed the people who weren't players, the ball boys and, equipment guys and so forth, and that kind of stuck with me, but honestly, and I had a best friend who was also into it, and we planned our careers together. We wanted to be players, number one, but number two, he discovered there was a college that offered us a degree in sports administration. It was Ohio University. It was the only college in the nation that offered some sort of a degree in sports, and so we kind of set our sights on Ohio U together.
And so you didn't choose Ohio U though, did you? You ended
I didn't choose Ohio
U.
You know, I got into we moved to Virginia, and I got into UVA, and my parents said, "You're going to UVA." So
good school.
But when I got there, I was able to create my own major, with my advisor's approval, and so I created a major that kind of was based around sports management.
Yeah, and did your friend end up sticking in sports or no?
No, he didn't. He went another way. Yeah.
Okay, so you were focused in through high school. Really, that dream never left you, and then you get to college and you design your own coursework that's really focused on sports and sports management. And while you're in college, you decide to try to get an internship, like a lot of college kids do, and you end up getting an internship with the Baltimore Colts. But did you try? You tried to get in with the Redskins first, and then
I did.
Found your way to the Colts.
My parents lived 2 miles from their headquarters, and so one Christmas I went to them and asked if they could use a free volunteer the following summer, and they said no, and so Baltimore is an hour up the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you get the opportunity, and I read that you were a young guy back then, that you were so passionate about wanting to follow this kind of a career path that you were somebody that just did whatever needed to be done. That if no matter how down and dirty it was, or or how glamorous, which I know that runs the gamut when it comes to a sports franchise. There's a lot of jobs that just need to get done. So a lot of the times I'm interviewing people on this podcast, I'm hoping that some young people take away nuggets that would be helpful for them. And I feel like one of them is kind of how you conducted yourself, just being a guy that always said yes. It sounds like.
And that wasn't a strategy on my part.
Yeah.
I just did. I just loved being there. I mean, the Colts were this iconic franchise that I had growing up following, watching, Johnny Unitas and Raymond Berry and then after that, Burt Jones and the Sack Pack, and Lydell Mitchell and guys like that. And some of those guys were still there in 81. So it was just a surreal experience for me, and it wasn't a strategy to do all those things. I just, I just loved being there, but it is advice that I give when I go speak to a class or talk to a young person about a career in sports. I say, make yourself as valuable as possible and embrace the crap jobs, that no one else wants to do, and make yourself valuable.
And that's how you stand out. I mean, it's how you stand out
really
to those that
it doesn't guarantee anything, but that's the way to gain people's respect. And at the very least, you have references,
absolutely,
whatever you want to do.
So do I have it right that you're going to UVA for college? And at some point, did you decide to take a semester off of college and work for the Colts full time?
At the end of that summer, they were saying, "Oh, it's too bad you got to go back to school. We could really use your help," and I talked to my parents about it, and we agreed to take the semester off and just stay with the Colts. And they were ecstatic that I could stay.
Yeah,
because I knew what to do and so forth. And so, that's something I'm really glad I did it.
Did your parents didn't have a fear if you took a semester off that you may not finish your degree? They could tell you were very focused, and that was just kind of a little break.
They were very open minded about it, and they thought that if the Colts want you to stay, then sure,
Yeah.
So they were great with it.
That's neat. That's the neat.
They had to send me
experience.
$50 a week to pay for my room and my food.
Did they?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's neat. That's neat. So. I want to move away from football for just a minute. We're going to talk a lot more, but in some of the things I've read, including in the Indiana 250 publication, you express an interest in foreign affairs, and even I think I read somewhere that a job that maybe you would have thought about for a second that you could have really enjoyed would be a foreign affairs correspondent for the New York Times. So was there something at UVA or otherwise in your background that kind of sparked an interest in foreign affairs that you still track what's happening in the world in that regard?
Well, I grew up in a family. My parents, always watched the evening news, with whether it was Walter Cronkite or the Huntley Brinkley Report. So we'd watch the evening news as a family. As a little kid, I remember watching significant stories, the civil rights marches and, Vietnam and all that sort of thing. And so I was always interested in what went on with the world, and my parents were my biggest influence, and we'd always, read the paper. And even before I could read, I'd look at the photos and, they subscribed to National Geographic. And I remember looking at the photos in that before I could read. And, but I mean, and then at UVA, I took some journalism classes and had this classic old, journalist, professor who was like in his 80s, but had wonderful stories. And just watching, journalists like, Peter Arnett and just these great guys covering Vietnam. It's just fascinating to me and really sparked an interest. So I think if sports didn't work out, that was my backup plan.
Were you a journalism major? Was that your?
No. I had this hybrid major I designed, but journalism classes were part of that curriculum. Yeah. Really enjoyed it.
That's neat. I read again that that you follow what's happening in the world clearly, and you followed what's happening in Ukraine and Russia, and that Zelensky that you admire him and his leadership.
Sure.
Yeah. I do too. Yeah. It's unbelievable.
I mean, it puts your life on the line. And certainly, Russia's leader, murders anybody that has a dissenting voice. You can imagine what he's gone through trying to kill Zelensky,
just to stay alive is a feat. It's like, absolutely.
I want your country and I'm going to kill you for it, and I don't care if you're, a family or a grandma or little kids. I'm going to shoot rockets into your apartment buildings and schools and churches, and I want your country, and so I just have the utmost admiration for him and the Ukrainian people, honestly.
I do too. Well, I want to turn back to football, and as I was preparing for our conversation, I was amazed it just hit me because you don't think about this very often, but the fact now that the Colts have been in Indy for 42 years out of 72 years in existence. So 42 versus the 31 that it was in Baltimore. We've been by a long shot longer in Indianapolis now than in Baltimore. And it just doesn't seem that that's possible.
It's incredible.
Because I do remember the video of those Mayflower moving vans. I'm old enough to remember that. And I wanted to, it's always interesting because I've watched the 30 on 30. There's a great 30 on 30 about that move and, Bob Irsay and family moving to Indianapolis. And you were part of that. You were a young guy that, was with the organization for a few years right before that happened. But, I'm sure you've talked about this a lot, but for our podcast, I'm curious just today, what are your most vivid recollections of that evening or that time period when that happened? Yeah.
It was very unsettling, because we didn't know it was happening for a long time. We almost moved to Phoenix in January, and that fell through. Our relationship with our fan base was at an all-time low. I had to hire security guards with guard dogs.
Oh my gosh.
And I had to do it from outside of Baltimore because no one wanted to work with us in Baltimore. It was just a very unsettling time. And late March came around. It was late in the year, and we hadn't sent out renewals for our season tickets. And I'm thinking, what are we doing here? And I honestly thought he was just trying to negotiate a better lease with Baltimore. And that's why, all the talk. And so when Jim called me into his office late that day of the move and told me we were moving, I was, slightly shocked that we're actually doing it because it was March 28th. We had the draft coming up in 3 weeks, and minicamp after that, and we just signed, a renewal a few months ago with the training camp in Maryland. And so it was a shocking time. Fortunately, I didn't have much of a personal life. But he told me to go home and come back and get packed and then come back at 10 o'clock for the trucks, and so it was an exhausting, adrenaline filled because it was exciting, but at the same time, mixed emotions because I knew we're just leaving in secret and leaving a lot of good people behind, and fans. So that's always, relocating a franchise is nasty business. I always think of the 10-year-old boy with the jersey. I think of when I was that age, and how, what do you tell him, So, but it worked out for both cities in the end, and I love being here. It was a great move.
It's so I am a business guy. I've done a lot of deals as a lawyer, mergers and acquisitions and so forth. And, I love the kind of the quote art of the deal. But it's fascinating to me because my hunch is that when Bob Irsay was negotiating that he wasn't 100% sure. You just mentioned you thought maybe just negotiating to get a better deal in Baltimore and get a deal done in Baltimore for a new stadium. My hunch is that he wasn't 100% sure how it was going to go, but then maybe I just throw this out. Maybe the lure of Indy, the fact that it was a stadium, the fact that he wasn't getting fast enough traction maybe in Baltimore. It's just that whole thing is fascinating to me as just a business deal guy because my hunch is that maybe it was not 100%. There was an awkward time where he wasn't maybe 100% sure. Did he ever talk about that, or did Jim ever talk about that? That they weren't 100% sure which way this was going to go.
So many factors involved. I maintain, and Jim as well, that we never would have landed in Indy had not, the leaders of Indianapolis had the foresight to build a state-of-the-art stadium back then with nobody, with no tenant in mind.
Right.
So that was what made Indy super attractive. But even with that, Jim says in talking with his dad, if the city or state of Baltimore had written them a check for $12 million, would still be in Baltimore. So
it's hard because it's hard. To your point earlier, it's very hard to pick up and leave a fan base and think about trying to create a new one, and among all with that turmoil,
really, really difficult. And to do it that late in the year, I mean, we got here with nothing. We had our players under contract and our coaches, but aside from that, we had a gymnasium floor full of boxes and helmets and footballs, and we had to sort through that for 2 weeks, before we could even get going and hire people. It was a nightmarish time, but it was at the same time so exciting to be in a city that was excited to have you.
So Mayor Hudnut, as we've talked about, makes this big bet. Builds a stadium with no guarantee that there's going to be an NFL team to fill it, but that certainly was the goal. There was an inkling that there may be some opportunities, but it certainly wasn't a certainty. Was there, as you all had landed in Indy and were getting ready, doing all the things that you need to do to prepare for a season, did it feel like there was even extra pressure to be as good as you possibly could as a franchise because of the risk that was taken politically? I'm just curious, what was or maybe it was just just a glorious feeling because the bet had paid off. And I'm just wondering, from a political standpoint, so much had been, really, so many civic leaders, the Jim Morrises of the world and others had been so engaged to get this done. Did it feel like there was extra pressure on the Colts organization, or did it just feel like, hey, we're welcome here and loved here? And
honestly, there's always pressure to win. So I didn't think there's any more pressure than ever before. But there was a lot of instability back then. Your general manager was Jim Irsay, 24 years old. And he had the most pressure on him because he had the answers to his dad, and and he had never negotiated player contracts and that sort of thing. And so he was doing his best. We were doing our best, but we didn't have much to work with. And his, he learned a lot by watching what his dad did and how to not build a winning franchise. There was a lot of instability for that first decade. So it was unsettling because, we a few months before the move, we just traded away John Elway, and
oh my gosh, I forgot about that.
There was just a lot that that made us anxious.
That was a tough time.
And when Jim finally took over the franchise, it was very cathartic to be able to start doing things that we wanted to do for years, but couldn't do.
Yeah.
So So it was, just a really unsettling and unstable time,
Yeah.
And I had opportunities to go else thinking, man, I don't know if I want to stay here, but working, with and under Jim was what made me want to stay, because I knew at some point he was going to be running the show.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to talk to you about Jim. It's a good segue to do that. Obviously, we lost him this year. A terrible, what nobody had hoped would happened. And but I know you came when you and Jim were about the same age, if I've got it right. So two young guys growing up together in a franchise. Talk a little bit, if you can, about your relationship with Jim and
Sure.
What he meant to you.
Yeah, well, when I was finally hired full time, I found out that I was going to be sharing an office with Jim Irsay, the owner's son, in training camp, and I was certainly anxious about that, because his dad had a ferocious reputation.
Yeah.
So I had some pretty apprehensive expectations about what Jim would be like. I had never met him before, I detected from the start that he knew I was nervous and he was trying to make me feel comfortable with him, and he went out of his way to make me feel, relaxed and welcome, and I was respected about that, and his wife, Meg, and they just had their youngest daughter, Carly, who's, who she is now. And Casey had just been born, the next year. And so I kind of grew up, with them and know just what big hearts they have and the things how much they care about the community. And I saw things that the public didn't see.
Yeah.
And that's what, kept me with the team in those early years, because they're just wonderful people.
Yeah.
And the daughters are all wonderful people to work for and well-grounded. And they just love, our city and state and they want, I know that they want a winner for the fans more than anything. And that's really inspiring.
Yeah. They of course grew up here. So this is their town.
Yeah.
And Jim and you were young when the move took place. And, so it's just amazing to see how things have evolved. And like you said, there are so many stories when Jim passed, there were so many stories that, came out about the things that a lot of people didn't know that he did behind the scenes to be helpful to the community, to be helpful to individuals.
Yeah.
And you got to see that. And I'm assuming that, like you said, that played a big part. You could see the transition that was going to occur, that occurred and kept you here.
Yeah. You know about the things he did publicly, but one of the things he told me early on, he reminded about Frank Sinatra. He read a story about Frank Sinatra and Frank's assistant. They would look through the local paper and look for people who had undergone, they lost their car or they lost their house or whatever, and let's help this person out. And that was an inspiration to Jim.
Wow.
and he did that a lot,
Yeah.
He didn't go through the paper, but but he'd hear about.
He's a very generous person.
And would help people out. Yeah. Including, employees that had misfortune, pay for funerals and things like that. It was just that no one ever knew about,
Right. So. Right. Well, it was very sad to lose him. Yep. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the transition and a little bit later in the podcast with his daughters. But I wanted to talk a little bit about you've had a front row seat to the transformation really of Indianapolis. In the intro, I talked a little bit about you didn't really know a lot about Indianapolis and kind of had a different connotation. Indy did, way back then in the early 80s. But give me a feel for, your take on what has happened since you've been in Indianapolis, the transformation of the city, and to the extent you think the Colts have maybe played a little part in that. I mean, from my perspective, the the Colts coming to Indianapolis, it was a transformational moment because we could say as a city, we're playing in the big leagues. We're part of, a growth industry that you've got a NFL franchise is a big deal, just like the Pacers are a big deal in other professional sports. There's something that gives a sense of a pride to a city and ability to attract young people, all those things. But what's your experience been like in terms of seeing how Indianapolis has changed in the years since you arrived?
Yeah, so I've told this story many times, but my first night in Indy, we're up at the Holiday Inn North, the Holodome, at Michigan and 465. I got on Michigan in my rent-a-car, and I'm going to drive downtown, and see what downtown's like, and look for the happening spot, and drove right through downtown. Ended up down near Greenwood. I never found the happening spot,
Right.
So I wasn't, it wasn't very promising at first, and I hadn't heard great things about Indy. I heard about the 500, and certainly the Pacers, but not much else. And then the second night, I asked the hotel, "Hey, tell me where?" And I like Chinese food. What's a great Chinese restaurant? And I went there, and I had maybe the worst Chinese meal in my life, And then the next night, Mexican food. I love Mexican food. Where can I eat? They sent me I won't say the name. It was downtown Mexican restaurant. It was like the worst Mexican food I ever had in my life. So I wasn't really inspired by Indy right away,
Yeah. Yeah.
But certainly what's happened to Indy, and I saw it transfer when we first moved here. There was St. Elmo's, there was King Cole's restaurant downtown. Wasn't much else. People were ready to say, "Hey, you got to try Ike and Jones's new bar restaurant that opened downtown."
Yeah.
There wasn't much else, And the transformation that's taken place since we moved there, I'm not saying it's because of us, but I think we're a part. Having an NFL team downtown was a part of it. And the museums, the restaurants, you got Mass Ave and Fountain Square, and you have a riverfront. There's things that are starting to happen downtown that are really exciting to me.
Yeah.
So there's been a huge transformation. It's just the cultural change,
the
worldly factor that has descended upon Indy in the past few decades. I just love, and I'm excited for the future of our city. So, having two major league sports franchises downtown and combined with everything else, a great minor league ballpark, really makes it an attractive place to live, and I'm really proud of it. But getting back to your point, I still think of it as a small, intimate city compared to other NFL markets. So I just love it. When we played the Bears in the Super Bowl, my perspective was, here's little Indianapolis going against big Chicago on the world stage, and we just kicked their ass, and when we hosted the Super Bowl again, we just kicked
world class,
butt,
world class.
I just love it when we show the world what we're made of.
I do too. And you just made me think of one of my most favorite sports moments, which was sitting in Miami, watching the Colts play the Bears in the rain with Prince playing. Yeah. Purple Rain in the rain. It rained the whole game. They want to always host Super Bowls in Miami because the weather's so great. It was from morning till night, just rain.
It was Bears weather all the way.
It was.
And the game started.
And you'll recall the game didn't start off very well because a guy took the kickoff and ran. Was it Hester? I think it was Hester.
Hester took it.
And
then our first possession, Peyton throws a pick, and I thought, oh my gosh, we beat the Patriots, that dramatic win, and we're here, and we're going to lose.
Yeah. But it sure got better from there. Yeah. That was a wonderful memory for everybody that follows the Colts. So, I want to talk about we had the Hoosier Dome we talked about, then became the RCA Dome, was rebranded, but then it was time to build something even more special and permanent home. That's the Lucas Oil Stadium, and you were really the point person on that new stadium. Talk about the importance of that stadium and getting that done, and what that was like. I mean, that's a big heck of a project for any city to build a new stadium, state of the art stadium. Almost 20 years ago, I think it was that was built, right? Yeah. Curious, just any thoughts?
Sure.
Or anything that we didn't. Looking back, I know people at times change. Are there things missing now that it's almost 20 years old that we want as a NFL team and a stadium?
Right. Well, there's a lot of interesting dynamics in that. We weren't campaigning for a new stadium. We had a pretty favorable lease, and And it was Fred Glass came to us to propose the stadium because they needed more convention space. They needed a new venue for NCAA events, and and we liked what he presented to us, and we weren't sold on a new domed or retractable roof stadium, an outdoor stadium. We talked about how so many memorable NFL moments and passion for the game come from games that were affected by weather, through the decades.
Yeah.
And, the Ice Bowl, I mean, you can go through and count them all. So we, and we were kind of thinking that, if we're going to build this avid fan base like you have in Chicago or Green Bay,
maybe an open air stadium might make sense.
Buffalo, yeah, maybe an open air would make sense. But to get this done, we understood it had to be downtown. It had to benefit the city, in a lot of ways, and being connected to the convention center made sense. Fred sold that, and it all made sense. And so it was a multi-use stadium. There were things that we certainly would have loved to have had, like for the one thing, the retractable seats eliminates access to underneath the stands, like you see in all the new stadiums, and the field suites along the sidelines. And, we would have loved to have had, more vertical access, but we love our stadium, and we think it's the most beautiful stadium, in the NFL.
Yeah. And,
as complicated as life is with the retractable roof, and making that decision every week, when it's open on a beautiful fall day, it's the most beautiful stadium in the world, in our opinion, and the fans love it. We do surveys. The NFL does surveys after every NFL game, and our fans tell us they love our stadium. Yeah.
So it's always a little unclear to the casual observer, like how that ultimately that decision gets made on whether the roof is open or whether it's closed. Used to be thought that, Peyton Manning makes that decision. It felt like there was like some.
Let me tell you, if Peyton made that decision, it would never be open.
Yeah, exactly. And it felt like it was closed more often.
Yeah. If you allowed quarterbacks and kickers to make that decision,
they like perfect air. They don't want any have to fight the wind or the elements.
So you can imagine, the pressure when Peyton walks into my office. Hey Pete, I really appreciate it if you can tell Jim, if we could have the roof closed this week, it'd be really awesome.
But is it a home team call? Or is it an NFL call? Is it a combination of looking at the weather?
It's a situational decision.
Yeah.
Certainly, fan comfort is a factor.
Yeah.
It was a really tough decision this last Sunday.
Yeah.
We had and we got to make the decision in advance. And the forecast can change, and we're told it's going to be breezy as a late kickoff. We get, whether it's open or closed, we'll get complaints the next day.
Yeah.
If it's a beautiful day, but the sun is on, a certain section.
It's hot. I was there too.
I'm going to cancel my season tickets. It's open again.
I get it.
If it's 55 degrees and you're in the shade,
right,
we get the same calls, So it's a balancing act, and sometimes there's a competitive, factor,
sure,
on whether or not it's going to give us an advantage.
Well, going back to the previous conversation, I think I got to call Fred Glass and complain to him a little bit, because I would have loved like an open air stadium. I just think it is so cool. I've been in the Buffalo Stadium, I've been to Green Bay Stadium, I've been to the Bear Stadium, and there is something special about that. Now, there are days when you think it'd be really great if it was covered, but I also understand the city wants to be a sports city that hosts all kinds of events, including things like swimming championships, where they build a pool in the stadium, and they want to host Final Fours where you need a big stadium. So I completely get the need.
And the roof was a huge factor in the city getting college football championships.
That's right.
Big Ten championship every year.
Yeah. And we don't have the luxury to go build another stadium. It's expensive stuff.
The huge conventions spill over into Lucas Oil Stadium. So there's that factor too.
You got to balance those things.
Monster trucks. I mean, you can go on that. Right. I mean, Taylor Swift. That was like having 3 Super Bowls.
Oh my gosh. So, I was there, and that was something else. That was a long, long, long concert for a guy like me.
You and I both.
So more ahead with Pete Ward of the Indianapolis Colts when we return to Off the Record podcast presented by Prolific. Stay with us. Most organizations hit a point where growth stalls. The message blends in, the site stops converting, the pipeline softens. That's when I tell leaders about Prolific, the growth firm for purpose-driven leaders. Through full-service marketing and strategy, they clarify the story, rebuild your go-to-market, and drive sales. Most importantly, Prolific holds itself accountable to the metrics that matter to you. If you're ready for your next growth stage, learn more about Prolific at prolifichq.com. Welcome back to Off the Record podcast. I'm Nate Feltman, CEO of IBJ Media, and I'm talking today with Pete Ward, the Chief Operating Officer of the Indianapolis Colts. Pete, there's a stack of newspapers sitting next to you. My assistant, check those out. So
IBJ, of all
yeah,
things.
they're IBJ, but the reason they're there is probably why she likes to put little things that are associated somehow with our guest. Yeah. And I know your first job that you can recall, a serious job, was delivering newspapers, right?
Absolutely. Carmel Pine Cone in Carmel, California.
It was mine too. And it is one of those first jobs that you learn a lot as a young person, right? Because those customers expect that paper to be there at a certain time.
It did.
And rain, snow, or shine. You didn't probably have as much snow, but you had rain and elements. Yeah. And I can remember some mornings where I thought to myself, I do not want to get out of bed. I stayed up too late. But your customers depend on you being there.
You had to get the job done. And so without even realizing it, you're learning.
Yeah,
just get it done.
Exactly.
No excuses, right? You had to get it done.
Had to.
Yeah.
So Pete, you've been with the same organization since you were a college intern, 45 years, which is hard to believe.
It's the 45th season.
It's 45th season. Yeah. 45th season with the Colts, and that is just such a rarity for anybody to stick with an organization for that length of time. And we did talk a little bit about this, but as you look back over the 45 seasons, what was it that you said, when you were a kid, this is what you wanted to do, and what has kept you invigorated, energized to come to work every day and do what you do to see the franchise succeed?
Well, I say number one, I'm still as big a fan as I'm just a fan, huge football fan, especially NFL football. More and more, it's what we do to make the world a better place. The community things that we do, and having that platform to make a difference. Mm-hmm. And we have ownership that is totally invested in community involvement. I mean, Kalen Jackson spearheads our philanthropy, and now that Jim has passed on, and they're all about that, So, the fun part is the football. The fulfilling part is the community impact.
Yeah, and it's just such an amazing impact. It's not just the support for local philanthropy and the causes that are important to our community, but as I kind of inferred earlier, the community pride that a sports of any kind engenders in the community for our city, for just a good feeling, especially when there's so much we get down about in the world today. But to see a winning team from your community do well, it really makes a difference. We just saw that with the Pacers making the final run all the way to the final game of the NBA championship. And you've seen it multiple times and in lots of years when Peyton was leading the team, and we're seeing some great positive movement this year, and it just changes the feeling in the community, doesn't it?
It is. I mean, after a game on Sunday, if we win, we can go into the Kroger, in Zionsville on the way home. The difference between in that store between a win or a loss is a palpable difference. Either quiet and depressed or lively, and people wearing their Colts stuff. It's really remarkable.
Yeah.
And you see that with the Pacers too,
Yeah.
I go back to when we won the AFC Championship at home, and you had, people in the streets hugging each other, strangers,
Oh, yeah.
neighborhoods coming. I've heard so many stories. Oh, you should have seen our neighborhood. We're all out in the street,
Yeah.
and it just bonds a community. Sports does,
It does.
and
Yeah.
so that's a really cool element to a pro sports team, or even seeing what's going on with IU.
Yeah.
It's their labor market.
No doubt about it.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. It's happening the same as a lot of us Hoosiers. I'm an IU guy by where I went to school, but a lot of us Hoosiers are dreaming of some special things this year with both the Colts and the Indiana football team.
And, Nate, when our players go to the Pacer games, they'll show our players up on the big screen, and the crowd goes nuts. And when we have their players, we'll show them up there, and the crowd goes nuts.
Yeah.
It's just kind of
it's super fun.
It kind of lends itself to that intimacy that Indianapolis has too.
It sure does. It sure does. I wanted to talk a little bit about the pure growth of, sports in general has grown beyond, I think, most people's imagination, just from an entertainment and just a part of the culture for American culture and beyond America, obviously global now. But you've really witnessed during your 45 seasons that what's happened with the NFL in particular. And I think of it, I don't think it's a stretch to say that football and NFL has surpassed the viewing audience of what used to be known as America's pastime, baseball. When I was a young kid, it was always referred to as America's pastime, and it really has become fantasy football, all these things that are part of really the culture for America, and as I said, even growing beyond America now with games being played all over the world. Talk a little bit about how, just what you've witnessed, and it seems like amazing growth story from when you started to what's happening today.
Yeah, and it just keeps going and going. If you go back in time, Colts history, 58 championship was the nation's introduction to NFL football. It was the first nationally broadcast championship game, and turned out to be, at the time, it was billed the greatest game in history, and it was overtime, it was dramatic. And then 6 years later, if you look at a lot of, the marketing numbers tell you that that's when the NFL kind of became the new national pastime, and it lends itself well to television. It's got the yard lines, and so you can really see how fast somebody's running, compared to, relatively.
Yeah.
And the the physicality and the drama, the excitement is really remarkable. What hooked me as a little kid was watching NFL highlights on it. Well, it was a weekly show called NFL Action, and the slow motion and the dramatic music, and that hooked me, as a kid. So it lends itself well to video and television, and I think that's been probably the biggest factor, and it just keeps getting stronger and stronger.
Yeah.
And it's growing now internationally too. So it's just a great game.
I feel like there's a component, because I have kids who have grown up with phones and technology. I feel like there's a component of the growth that may not be the biggest part, but my kids' attention span is much different. And I think it's not just my kids, like our attention span, because of technology and because of what iPhone and all the technology we know today, is shorter. So like I find myself, even I've not watched as much baseball, even though I love baseball. I played baseball and huge fan. But I have a harder time watching a baseball game versus the action that is consistent, and it's action. Baseball is not as action with a lot of the tackling and pass. It's just a different game, right? And so I find that maybe that's part of it too, or just our
maybe. I mean, it's a challenge for us too. Keeping people's attention.
Yeah.
The fractured attention span affects every sport.
Yeah.
Every TV show.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the challenges
for
in our society.
For sure.
A fractured attention span.
Yeah. Well, it feels like the NFL has done a lot to capitalize, maybe better than some leagues, and on that, I don't know, or maybe just
we're doing our best, but I think ultimately it's just a great game.
Yeah, it is. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how the transition has gone. I mean, of course, Jim died suddenly, and his daughters, Carly, Kaylin, and Casey, are now, front and center as owners. We know on the on-field piece looks great this year so far, knock on wood, but How are you feeling and seeing that transition?
I tell you, it's been as far as the transition goes, it's been as smooth as you could possibly hope for. That all of them grew up around the team. I mean, they've been there since they were little, and then for years and years since they've been adults. So they know how it's done. They're all super intelligent and grounded, and their dad taught them key elements of ownership and leadership. Everyone loves working for them because they're wonderful people. So you can ask for better situation and a transition.
That's great.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah.
I always like to ask my guests on Indiana 250 podcasts about mentors that have been important to them. And have there been, I'm sure, in your career, some mentors that you look back and say they made a big difference in my career, in my life?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, locally, I would say, people like Jim Morris, Dave Frick, super intelligent, care about the community. Dave is the ultimate speak softly, carry a big stick,
Yeah.
All of them super gentlemen, Richard Luger, I loved, what a great, admirable man, Evan Pye, people like cared about the community, have been my local mentors. And then, professionally, a lot of people I love, things that, Ernie Accorsi taught me when I was first hired. He was the general manager there, and Walt Gutowski, who was the PR director, young Walt Gutowski, and back in Baltimore, and of course, Jim, when he became, owner and GM, there were things, he was doing things that I didn't know about, and he taught me a lot, as well. So I could go on and on, Pete Rozelle, even though I didn't know him closely, I read, a lot of, I read his book and a lot about him, and he was an influence.
Yeah. So great people. I know some of them, certainly the local ones that you mentioned, and I count them similar to you as mentors, and always gave great advice.
Sure.
And are there any? You've been around great athletes and leaders in the locker room. Over time, are there any that you became? I'm sure you became friendly with a lot of them, but are any of them that stick out to you as became good friends, and that you may have picked up a trait or two from them in terms of their leadership qualities?
No question. I think of Tony Dungy, who, what a great communicator. He never raises his voice, but he just, with what he says and the way he says it, just demands respect, and people listen intently to what Tony Dungy says,
Right.
Remarkable man. Of course, you got to throw Peyton Manning in there, and his attention to detail, and his work ethic.
Right.
And combining that with humanity, and just his sense of humor is such a wonderful guy,
Yeah.
So many guys. I could go on and on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just neat to, I'm sure throughout your career, just to see different leaders, how they lead differently, how they have like you just described. I mean, some of them are all work, and some of them can balance it. And it's just, that's the way it is in business and life. I mean, just to see different people, how they operate. I always find that fascinating. That's why I like doing this podcast, because I love learning about people's backgrounds and how they got to where they are.
One of the first things I learned quickly was, I always took, and this is not to denigrate sports reporters, but I always took them. They were the experts. They knew, they had the inside scoop and everything. No one really knows what's going on unless you're in there, and or what people are like,
Right.
So that was an eye opener for me.
Yeah, I am sure. So, Pete, last question before we turn to our off the record speed round, we call it, where we ask similar questions from past years. But as we've talked about, you've been with the Colts organization for 45 seasons. You've witnessed people we just talked about, legendary players like Peyton Manning, now Jonathan Taylor. You've been a part of a Super Bowl championship, of course, in a season where the Colts went to the Super Bowl, ended up runners up back in Miami against New Orleans. As you think back about the biggest moments of those 45 seasons are the ones that really stand out as memorable. Like when you think back, are there 2, 3, or 4 that really stand out to you as just incredible moments for you? And
Sure. Well, winning the championship here at home is unmatched, and the way it was done against our arch rival, our nemesis, against the evil, Bill Belichick and the Patriots, in front of our home crowd, in front of a juiced home crowd, late game, the atmosphere, and the way it was done, the comeback was Hollywood at its finest. I think if you ask any Colts fan that was alive during that time, they'll tell you that was it.
I was in that.
That was the pinnacle.
I was in that stadium, and it was unbelievable.
Yeah, that was the pinnacle.
Yeah.
I honestly wish we had more footage of the crowd during that game.
Yeah.
But the Super Bowl win certainly, it speaks for itself. But if we didn't win the Super Bowl, that championship game wouldn't have meant as much, So they kind of intertwined,
Right.
Aside from that, the 95 season was really special, and I think that we had the chemistry where if we had pulled out that game in Pittsburgh, I think we had a really good chance to win the Super Bowl that year with people like Sirgusa and Harbaugh and just the dynamics of that team. And we had 3 different chances to seal that game in the last 2 minutes, and that still haunts us, haunts me anyway, So those were probably the 2 moments that come across. The thing is, it's so difficult to get to the top of the mountain. And after that 95 season, I thought, I can't wait for next seasons to be back here. There's no guarantees, it could be years. And it's certainly like 3 years later, we're 3-13,
Yeah.
So it's, you never know what's going to happen from year to year. And that's why I tell the young people in our organization, if things are down, we're having to do a bad season, things can change on a dime in this league. And they do every year. Somebody comes out of nowhere and somebody drops out of nowhere. And you're and this season is still young, but you're seeing it this year.
That's what the amazing thing is about sports, right? You just described, right? I mean, we're seeing it at IU. We're seeing it in the Colts organization. The expectations were so low heading into this year, which makes it even more fun when you see the kind of success. I said this could be my last question, but the question is, real last question here is, did you have a feeling, or did the people in the organization have a feeling that there were a lot of pieces in place on this team that there was the opportunity to be as successful as so far the Colts have been this season, with a 7-1 record right now? Was there a feeling that we were not too many pieces away from being great, or what was the organization?
I've said all along. I said, look at the guys we have in place. All we need is productive play at the quarterback position. That's all we need to be a contender in this league, in this day and age. And so I'm secretly optimistic every year because, like we're talking about, all it takes is a little tweak or a couple of guys to develop. They can just change the dynamic of a team. The difference in talent for a player on the New York Jets and for us is like that, and they're all elite athletes. And all it takes is some little tweaks. And now that we have great play coming from the quarterback position, and we have a tight end that is, a future superstar by all intents and purposes, we're seeing that. So I was secretly optimistic, but you just never know.
Yeah.
You never know.
Right.
I mean, if you have the number 1 pick in the draft, you never know.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
But it sure is, as we talked about earlier, sure is exciting when the team starts gelling, and you can see it. You can see it on their faces, during the games, that they don't ever seem to be out of a game. That's the one thing I love about this coach. He doesn't, when he loses, they've not been blowing out losses. He's a very strategic coach and keeps the Colts in the game, even when before this wonderful time period where we're, beating teams comfortably in many cases. I feel good playing anybody with him as coach because he really seems to have a strategy of keeping it close.
Super intelligent, and super passionate, and the players feed off of that. And, if you can continue to score on 80% of your drives, I don't know. It doesn't matter what the other team does.
I really like not punting. It was really, really a good thing.
Yeah. So it's still early. We all say that it's still early. So, it's been really exciting.
It's been great to watch. So we've made it, Pete, to Off the Record speed round where I ask similar questions of every guest. So we'll start out with your favorite movie of all time.
The Killing Fields.
Good one.
Yeah.
Favorite place to vacation?
Montana.
Wonderful. Favorite musical artist?
Oh, that's a tough one. I've so many favorite. I guess this will be a boring answer. There's a sentimental factor, but I could probably listen to the Beatles more than any other.
Yeah. What is the first thing you do in the morning?
Drink water.
Title of the last book you read or your favorite book?
Last book I read, it's called The Frisbees of the South Seas. It's about a guy from Cleveland back in the 1930s who took his family to live in the South Pacific on some remote coral atoll. It's fascinating.
Okay. Favorite sport to watch other than football?
Basketball.
Best advice you ever received?
Wow. Big picture. Always keep your eye on the big picture.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let the little stuff distract you.
Yeah. That's good. I had similar good advice. It actually came from my mom, who said, "Don't sweat the small stuff."
There you go. Same thing.
Don't let stuff distract you. Like you said, stay focused. That's good advice. How about advice for a young person, maybe a young person in this community that wants to be a future leader in the community or in their organization, and develop into a leader?
Wow. Listen and observe. Listen and observe and be involved. I think that kind of goes back to embrace the crap work and make yourself as valuable as possible.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Well, Pete, thank you so much for joining the Indiana 250 Off the Record podcast. I've had the pleasure of getting to know you and the organization. The Colts are a fantastic one for our community. You and the organization do so much, as we've talked about, and thank you for that. You mean, and the organization means just such a great deal to Indianapolis and much beyond for our state. So thank you for everything.
It's an honor, and honestly, this is critical too. Having publications, news publications in our community is critical.
Well. Thank you. We do our best on that front. So thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
To learn more about other leaders on IBJ Media's Indiana 250 list, go to indiana250.com and look for a page 2 feature each week in IBJ. We'll be back with the new Indiana 250 Off the Record conversation soon.
I'm Tiffany Souter, mom of 4, wife, entrepreneur, and host of the Life of And podcast. For years, I built my life with brute force, a successful business, a growing family, and absolutely zero margin. I was tired, snappy, and felt constantly behind, and I was too afraid to admit it. Everything changed when I stopped trying to do more and started building systems that actually worked for my real life. If you too are craving more peace, more presence, and just more time for you, I'd love for you to join me on the Life of And. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast app or listen at ibjpodcast.com.
Want to give your team a real edge? The IBJ Group Plan delivers unlimited access to every story, every report, every video from IBJ and Inside Indiana Business for your whole team. Cover some or all of your employees with one simple payment. The more you add, the more you save. It's smart, it's flexible, and it saves you up to 30% off the standard rate. Already have IBJ subscribers in your office? Group up and save big. Learn more and get started now at ibj.com/group-plan.